I was taken to hospital because it was thought I was having a stroke. When I got to the hospital, they completed a CT scan and then a lumbar puncture and then an MRI. The CT scan showed what looked like to be an old stroke, and that's why the neurologist came to me and said, Katrina, look, it looks like you might have had a stroke, so we're going to admit you. You're going to have a lumbar puncture and you're going to have an MRI. I was afraid, petrified. They then put me into the neurological intensive section of the neuro ward in the hospital, and I was monitored for 48 hours with all the equipment. And some interesting things came up for me during that time. And then very, very luckily, it was found that the final diagnosis was, and this came about from the MRI, a thing called cerebral vascular constriction syndrome. The only part of the symptoms that I didn't really have is the thunderclap headache. I didn't have that. I had mild headaches, but it could have been from the CT. But it certainly wasn't a very severe migraine type headache. Nevertheless, the MRI, from the MRI, that's the diagnosis. And I don't normally share here on the Brain Body Behaviour Institute stuff about me. I do a lot more of that on my other platform called A New Way to Love. But I thought, given that it's the Brain Body Behaviour Institute, I kind of should tell you about my brain. I should share it with you because, I want to share with you my recovery. The good news is, now the neurologist didn't tell me this, but the good news is that when you Google cerebral vascular constriction syndrome, because everyone Googles, I Googled, you Google, it shows, it literally every entry is reversible cerebral vascular constriction syndrome. And so I am grateful to have a hope that I can reverse the impact of these changes on my brain. It's taken a little while to work out exactly what's happening and what happened, but essentially what I understand is that I have across my brain several places, I'm not sure how many, where there's the tiny blood vessels are narrowing. I have narrowed, and this is having impact. Luckily, apparently, they're all in places that don't impact my functioning, and that rings true for me because I feel like I'm still functioning, in ways, in my usual way. I left the hospital with a whole lot of recommendations from the neurologists, and so I thought I would share my journey with you. I've got a follow-up MRI 3 months from my day in hospital, my time in hospital, my days in hospital. And so I'm about halfway there. I'm about 6 weeks into this process of recovery. And yeah, so that's what's happening. So the recommendations are really simple, but simple in theory. Let's talk about them. Every day, Katrina, this is what she said, what the neurologist said, every day, do your best to go and be in the sun. Interesting. She also said, you need to move more. I've gone through little episodes of movement in my life, but I have a very sedentary job. I sit on this couch and talk to people, or I'm on the computer. So, it's very sedentary. And I've always been a very sedentary person. And that one has come to bite me in my 51st year. So my advice is move as soon as you can. So I've started walking at least 5 times a week, and it's really, really interesting to do that. I've changed my diet because anyone who knows me knows that I had an appalling diet where I would eat, I always had strong cravings for sugar and salt. So it was nothing for me to eat a packet of lollies and a big packet of chips a day, and then have some cakes and then have some blah, 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 whatever I wanted. And biscuits, Tim Tams, if you're an Australian, you know what I mean. And so it's been a massive change. Like, I've stripped a lot of the processed foods out of my diet. I do have sugar still. I'm not having had chips, but I do have sugar, as in I have fruits, and I've been having a tiny bit of honey, raw honey, and a tiny bit of proper pure maple syrup. But it's been a big change. So, and also hydration, so increasing my fluid intake. And for me, that feels like a full-time. To be honest, these changes feel like a full-time job to me because I'm also ADHD, so I get overwhelmed a little bit. But, getting healthy food in, preparing healthy food, preparing meals, making sure I'm drinking, just the process of that is quite complex. And as I was saying, I was actually chatting away to someone the other day, and they said, well, Katrina, that's why people are into convenience foods. That's why, because it takes time to actually eat properly. So there's that. So healthier eating, and sun, hydration, more water, and of course stress. Like, how am I managing my stress? And look, I've been generally pretty good at managing my stress, considering the stress I've had to handle over the course of my life. But I cannot be I must say that from day dot of arriving on the planet, I have had a whole lot of stress, and it's due to my mum and my family. Like, I've experienced abandonment, and right from the get-go, my mum loved us well, but she hadn't been mothered by her own biological mother too well. And so she didn't really know how to be the best mum. She landed with my mama at 6 years of age. She was adopted, and she was absolutely able to, she was mothered beautifully by mama. But by then a lot of harm had occurred, in her life. And that was back in the days where we didn't fully understand everything. And so, so mum didn't know how to mum well. And what that does to a child, as you know, and I know this from work as a therapist, is it completely impacts on your state of stress and the way your brain operates, and your central nervous system and your vagal nerve and the whole thing. And so, I've been pretty much in a state of fight and flight probably my whole life, and covered up nicely. I'm a nice internalizer. I'm a nice internalizer, and so I mean, I've been healing since I was a teenager, so obviously I've been getting better all the way along, but life's inviting me to do yet another layer of healing. I'll be sharing these with you, and together we'll go on the journey. I've done 6 weeks of change, and then I'm doing another 6 weeks before the next MRI. And if you'd like to come along with me, come along with me, because I said to my daughters, I can't believe I'm talking about the brain. And one of my daughters said to me, Mum, you're always talking about the brain. And I said, yeah, I'm always talking about the brain in the context of brain-body behavior. I'm not really in the science of the brain. And, but I'm learning so many wonderful things. So I'm going to share those with you too, because why not? Why not? So that's what's been happening. Now, I've got lots of comments here I need to respond to, and I'll get back online and be doing that. Still sharing my other content as well. But I wanted to let you know, that there's a thing called cerebral vascular constriction syndrome, and it happens to people, and it happened to me. So I hope, as I share with you the recovery process, I hope that I might be able to share something helpful. Let's see.